Not to touch anything you're not supposed to touch. Okay. We are good over here. We have to get started on all these applications. We have to start them all so that the video starts working so people can see us. Okay. If we don't start the video, then they can't see us.
Well, what about this wet paper towel?
Okay. This is the one that we're going to use to clean that off. But you have to wait. Let me start my video first. I have to actually start the work first. So, go live over here. All right, so now we're good over there. We're good here. Good there. Good over there. Good over here.
What is this square?
What square?
Why are you just tapping every button?
Because we're trying to get this. We got to get the video started. So I had to start on several different platforms at the same time.
You can't do that, Daddy.
Yeah, we're using several devices and we're on several different platforms all at the same time. So that's why we're doing that.
Yeah. So let's clean this.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to get started on that in one moment. First, we got to start the video. This is the very reason why I'm here. So we got to make sure we do that too, right? Wait. This is not right.
And I'm going to flatten it into a circle.
Okay.
And you'll use it. Oopsie. My blue thunder dirty.
Okay. That's there. Let's get all of this. I get everything set up here. So let's see what we got. Our timer's on. That's on. That's on. That's on. That's on. Do you see yourself in all these videos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself in all these videos?
Yes, I do. I've been doing this for a while. This is more new to you than it is to me. So.
Do you see that red button?
Yes, that red button. That's the YouTube logo. It's a website called YouTube. You watch YouTube sometimes. You don't know it as YouTube. But when you watch your cartoons, that's YouTube. That's what it's called.
What was that heart?
That
with
heart.
No hands.
Yeah, that's people over there liking. They're liking the video. So they're liking the video.
What was that big heart?
That big heart was somebody sending they call it a gift on TikTok. So thank you whoever sent that gift. I think it was Jennifer.
I can say hello to TikTok again.
Yes, so say hello first of all to the people on Rumble and YouTube.
Well, hi Rumble and YouTube.
Say hello to X.
Hello X.
Say hi to Facebook.
Hi Facebook.
Say hi to LinkedIn.
Hi LinkedIn.
Say hi to Instagram.
Hi Instagram.
And then say hi to TikTok.
Hi TikTok. There's no books in here that good. That's.
What do you mean no books?
There's no books here in here.
What do you mean?
And not all of these videos.
No
books? No books that I could just say hello to. There's all of these books.
Yeah, these books are behind us. But we're talking to people. We're not talking to books. There are people on the other side of this camera. They're watching us, but there are people watching us.
Yeah.
Do you understand how that works?
Yeah.
Huh?
And there's some outside.
Yeah, there can be people outside. But we're going to focus on these cameras here because these are the people that are paying attention to us right now. Okay, so good morning.
So let's wipe this off.
Yes, we're going to get to that. Let me introduce the topic so I can get my audience knowing what we're doing here. Please like the live as y'all coming in on TikTok. Appreciate everybody for doing that early. Sunshine on my pillow. Good morning. You should say good morning to you too. So can you say good morning to Sunshine?
Hello, Sunshine.
Good morning. Nikki, good morning. Let me see who else. You got on this light colored shirt. It's hard for me to see the comments. Number 3, gifter badge. Jennifer, thank you for the gift. Who was that? JJ Fox, good morning. We got Connecticut in the building. Give me your locations, folks. As y'all coming in, tell me your locations. Gary Grays 5101. Good morning. Monica E. Thank you. Yes, he has developed great language skills. I think quickly. Angelica, good morning. Thank you for sharing the live. Thank you. Cindy Fisher, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's hard to read these comments because you have this gray,
Good morning.
gray pajamas on. I can't see the comments. The contrast is not there. Cindy Fisher, good morning. Virginia Beach is in the building. South Carolina, Chicago, Tennessee.
Good morning. Good morning.
Marky Man, North Carolina. Alpharetta, Georgia, Ohio. Good morning, everybody. All right, so what we're talking about here today is I heard yesterday. Okay, let's get to it. Let's get to this. I heard that Planned Parenthood is being essentially, or what is being attempted is the better way of saying it. Being attempted is they're trying to defund Planned Parenthood. So we're going to talk about that here today. What exactly this means, what are the ramifications, what exactly happened, first of all, what are the ramifications of this, and what we think about it, how we feel about it. So what happened is the Supreme Court earlier this week, they delivered a major 6-3 ruling. So those of you who know, the Supreme Court is 9 justices, and they don't always agree on things, and they don't have to agree. Basically, it's the majority ruling. So they had a 6-3 ruling. 6 of the justices ruled in favor and 3 went against. We're going to get into that in a moment. I do know that the 3 who were against, I believe it was Sotomayor, Jackson, and there was one other. I can't remember who it was. But the case is Medina versus Planned Parenthood, South Atlantic. And basically what it affirms is that state Medicaid programs that basically give Medicare to people based on financial need, they can exclude Planned Parenthood from receiving taxpayer funding. So it doesn't mean Planned Parenthood no longer exists. It just means that Planned Parenthood may not receive taxpayer funding. Now, this is a controversial ruling because this case started in South Carolina because the state of South Carolina decided, and I'm thinking South Carolina is red, right?
Yes.
I see it as red. How do you know? How do you know? I think South Carolina is red, but it can be contested. I believe South Carolina, or is it North Carolina that's contested? I think South Carolina is pretty red. Anyway, let me see.
Red.
Yes, we are red. Okay, you red in South Carolina. That's what I thought. Okay, so South Carolina, and we should assume that, knowing that what happened here. They removed the organization from its Medicaid approved provider list. So in other words, if you're on Medicaid, Planned Parenthood is not one of the approved providers anymore. And they cited that the state has already banned publicly funded abortion. So Planned Parenthood took them to court. This is what you do. They took them to court and they sued. They argued that Medicaid's federal law allows patients to see any quote unquote qualified provider. Be careful that this doesn't hit the microphone. Okay, you have to keep this over here. This is a very big truck. That they can see any qualified provider. But the court ruled that states have the authority to define what quote unquote qualified means. This, and those of you who remember back in last fall, 2024, heading into the election, that this word qualified became a really big subject, to the point I did an entire episode on my podcast about what the word qualified means, because everybody was throwing it around when it came to Kamala Harris. Is Kamala Harris qualified? Is she not qualified? What has she done to qualify herself? We got to make sure this fan stops vacillating. We want it to stay right in one spot, so we're nice and cool. Does that feel good?
No.
No?
Still hot.
Well, the fan is going to cool us off. That's the point. Okay. So people were questioning whether Kamala Harris was qualified or not. So this word qualified just sparks that idea in my head. It sparks that memory. So the court ruled the states have the authority to define what qualified means under Medicaid. That's a very important point. That the state can say, we think you're not qualified. We think you are qualified. All this does is open it up to a whole lot of subjectivity to where any state can basically decide you're qualified, you're not qualified, just based on basically who they like. Yeah, we're going to bring it closer. So it's all going to be based on subjectivity. So if a state likes you, they can say you're qualified. And if the state doesn't like you, they can say you're not qualified. And that's pretty much it. This introduces a whole lot of politics into this whole situation.
Saying it right here.
Yes, it is a monster mutt, but I need you to be quiet while I'm talking, okay? Because we're presenting to the audience, you see? Son, do you see all these people?
Yeah. I think this monster face is supposed to belong to a monster mutt.
Yes, it is. And you're going to be quiet while I'm talking, okay? So this is a major win for those who have long opposed taxpayer money going to abortion-connected providers. And we know this has been a big deal for several years now after the Supreme Court ruling. Now, while the ruling does not outlaw abortion, this is important. It does not outlaw abortion itself. It's a powerful legal precedent that many pro-life advocates, that means people who are against the concept of abortion, this is big for them. And it's a strategic financial blow to Planned Parenthood because even though, again, it doesn't stop Planned Parenthood from existing, it is a big...
No, yes.
No, yes. Where are you going?
You're just trying to clean.
Yeah, I did some of it, but I'm only going to do it while you're sitting here. If you get down, I got to stop. You want me to keep doing it or are you going to get it down?
I'm going to get down.
Okay. You going to take that with you?
Okay. I'll take it.
Okay. I'll see you. If you want to come back, you can come back. Okay? We'll close the door if you go out.
And I'll get a new wet paper towel.
Okay. All right. Now, continuing. So this is a major blow to Planned Parenthood on the financial side because now they're not able to serve people who are on Medicaid, and a significant number of people who may walk into a Planned Parenthood are on Medicaid. So this is a big deal for them. It also raises a broader questions about federalism, healthcare access, and this cultural war over this whole thing. This is basically moral governance because they're getting to decide. Again, every state is getting to decide that this is a qualified provider or you're not a qualified provider, which is, I don't know. Depending on the way you look at this could be a good thing, it could be a terrible thing, depending on the direction you're looking at it. Carlina, I see over there on YouTube from Tennessee. So the question has become, what role should states play in defining healthcare, and how far will both sides go to protect their ground? So I want to share a little bit from the Associated Press from this article that gives even more context to what happened here yesterday. Please like the live if y'all on TikTok. Let's get up to 15,000 likes. So a state can basically, what the Supreme Court decided is that the state can block the country's biggest provider of, because Planned Parenthood, even though it's called Planned Parenthood, that sounds like an organization that's all about what? You're going to have a child.
I got a new wet paper towel.
Okay. And you're doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
You're planning to have a child. Okay, I got it. Okay, this one, let's put over here because this is getting in the way. This is too big. So you're planning to have a child, and Planned Parenthood sounds like an organization that's going to help you plan being a parent. But Planned Parenthood, that's what it sounds like. That's the brochure definition of Planned Parenthood. But what does Planned Parenthood actually do? For those who don't know, most of you probably could assume this. Planned Parenthood is the #1 provider of abortions in the United States of America. That's who they actually are. They're the biggest abortion provider in the USA, and they've been receiving Medicaid money for these services. And they do other things. Planned Parenthood does other things like contraception and cancer screenings. And the thing is, Planned Parenthood does other things the same way that McDonald's does things other than sell burgers. Yes, they technically do other things, but what are they known for? What are people coming to them for? You got to be relaxed here, okay? Because I don't want you hitting anything on the screen, on the desk, okay?
I'm just trying to do this.
I know, and I'm just telling you that you need to relax while I'm doing my video, okay? So the justices found, and this comes from the Associated Press, Medicaid law does allow people to choose their own provider. That does not mean that it's a right that is enforceable in court. So the court was split among ideological lines. This is why which president gets to appoint which justices matters a lot. And the 3 liberals dissented in this case from South Carolina. So 3 liberals on the Supreme Court, 6 conservatives, and the 3 liberals said this should not happen, and the 6 conservatives said it should happen. This is how we get 6-3 as the outcome. So public health care money cannot be used to pay for abortions generally, but Medicaid patients go to Planned Parenthood for other needs, in part because it can be difficult to find a doctor who takes the publicly funded insurance. This is what the organization Planned Parenthood has said. This is their argument in their favor. So the governor of South Carolina, Mr. McMaster, he's a Republican. He said Planned Parenthood should not get any taxpayer money. And we know that where Donald Trump falls on this. And he moved to cut off Medicaid funding in 2018. He got blocked in court after a lawsuit from a patient. So basically, this is what you do. Just go back and forth until eventually you get a precedent that you want. And the states pointed out that lower courts have been swayed by similar arguments and allowed states such as Texas to act against Planned Parenthood. And the high court pretty much agreed. This is what recently happened. So here's what Gorish, is it Gorish, how you pronounce this guy's name? So Gorish says the following, quote, deciding whether to permit private enforcement poses delicate policy questions involving competing costs and benefits, decisions for elected representatives, not judges. So what Goris is basically saying is that we are not going to settle this in court. We're setting the precedent that this gets decided by the state, by whoever got elected. In other words, certain states you'll be able to do this and certain states you won't be able to do it. McMaster, the governor, said his state took a stand to protect the sanctity of life and defend South Carolina's authority and values. And today we are finally victorious. In other words, if you're trying to get an abortion, don't be in South Carolina. That's what that means. Any of you didn't catch that. You want to just translate this to regular language. This ain't the place to do it. Now, a White House spokesman, Harrison Fields, said the opinion is a major victory for common sense. And mind you, this is a spokesman from the White House. So elections have consequences, folks. And it said it underscores the Republican president's positions that states should determine abortion policy. So Donald Trump just said this is going to be a state-decided level, and this is where it is. So the dissent was written by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Everybody knows her, right? This is the person who doesn't know what a woman is, but she has a dissent on this subject. She disagreed with her colleagues, but her liberal colleagues she agreed with. She said the ruling is likely to result in tangible harm to real people. This is classic liberal language. Tangible harm to real people. Well, any ruling could likely result in, not likely, but any ruling could technically result in tangible harm to real people. What exactly does that even mean? Here's what Justice Jackson says. Quote, it will strip those South Carolinians and countless other Medicaid recipients around the country, because this is setting the precedent, of a deeply personal freedom, the ability to decide who treats us at our most vulnerable. While I understand that argument, at the same time, there's a lot that she's leaving out. So Planned Parenthood officials said this will hinder access to care and preventative screenings for 1 million recipients in the state of South Carolina. And the state didn't accuse them of providing inadequate care. This is what Planned Parenthood says. And they're just making this a political decision. And I say, of course they're making a political decision. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. That's exactly why they did it. So Planned Parenthood said we do a pretty good job of doing what we do. They're not saying we did a bad job of it. What they're doing is just making this a political issue. And I say, yes, that's right. Correct, Planned Parenthood. You got it right. So what Planned Parenthood says, this is one of their representatives, their chief medical officer, as a matter of fact, instead of patients now deciding where to get care, now the state gets to decide where they get care. And if they fall on hard financial times, as many are right now, they are fundamentally less free. I would say to Catherine Ferris, the chief medical officer of Planned Parenthood, that's correct. You're right. What's her name? Catherine. She's right. She is correct. Let me say again what she said and just put it into plain language. She said patients now don't get to decide where they get care if they're on state-funded care. The state gets to tell you what you get. I say, hell fucking yeah. This is the way it works. In case any of you didn't know. If you are dependent on the state, and the state being literally one of the 50 states or the government, the state means the government. You're dependent on the government for something. They get to tell you how you get it, when you get it, where you get it, and how much of it you get. Is that news to anybody? All she's saying, she's putting this into some softer language that makes it seem like this is some type of civil rights. Attack. Let's just say attack on people's civil rights. It is not. If you become dependent on any entity for something that you need, they get to determine how much of that thing you get, when, where, why, and how you get it, and they get to tell you how you get to use it. Why? Because you're dependent on them. If you weren't dependent, you can make your own choices. So Planned Parenthood is generally going to people who may not have access to care in any other way. I'm not saying everybody goes there for that reason, but often this is where they go. This is what they're talking about. They're all focused on this, that people who are in financial hard times, so they're on Medicaid and they're getting this state-funded care, the state is basically saying you can't go to Planned Parenthood. You go somewhere else, but you can't go to Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood is trying to make it seem like, well, you're taking away rights and freedoms from people. And I say not really, because if you're not paying for it, well, you get what you get. You get what you're given. That's the way it works. I remember my mom used to say that to me and my sister when we were young. If we asked for something or she gave us something and we wanted something else or something more or something different, she would say, you get what you're given. And this is pretty much how it works, folks. If you're dependent on the government, you get what they give you. And if you don't like what they're giving you, stop being dependent on the government. Now, become dependent on yourself. You can make your own choices. This is what independence means. So other conservative states are now expected to follow South Carolina. That's why this matters, because I don't live in South Carolina. But other conservative states are expected to follow South Carolina's lead by cutting funding to places like Planned Parenthood. And it's basically going to create an abortion ban, but do it in this backdoor type of way which is what the CEO of Planned Parenthood said. Her name is Alexis McGill Johnson. Notice there's a lot of females here and these on the other side of this argument. I don't know if that means anything or not. You tell me. Alexis McGill Johnson, she's the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood. She said this is going to create a backdoor abortion ban because right now 18 states weighed into the case in support of South Carolina. So those states are probably coming up next. So Medicaid patients make up 3.5% of Planned Parenthood's patients in South Carolina. 3.5%. So why are they making a big deal out of this? Again, this is not about those individual people. South Carolina has not expanded its Medicaid program, so reimbursements do not cover preventative care costs. And they will continue to provide care for women who need it in South Carolina, but they simply can't bill the government. That's pretty much what it becomes. So this does not close this down despite the government's best efforts. That's what Vicki Ringer, who is a spokesperson, said about this whole situation. So about a quarter of people in the United States are on Medicaid, 1 out of every 4. And lawsuits are the only real way to make sure that they can choose their doctors. And removing the ability to sue could reduce access to healthcare, especially in rural areas. That's what advocates say. That is an argument for that. Now, lawsuits are an important accountability tool. We don't need to go over that. In South Carolina, $90,000 in Medicaid funding goes to Planned Parenthood every year. That's it? $90,000 total? That's not even a lot of money. So this is much more about the politics than it is. And it's about the politics and the precedent more than it's about specifically what happens in South Carolina. The state only gives $90,000 every year to Planned Parenthood, which is like nothing politically, and a tiny fraction of their total spending. They banned abortions at 6 weeks gestation in 2022 after the Supreme Court ruling in 22. So this conservative Christian legal advocacy group, Alliance Defending Freedom, they represented South Carolina, said the ruling would allow the state to direct Medicaid dollars to comprehensive health care for low-income patients. All right, y'all got all that? All right, so let's get into this here. What exactly does all this mean? What do we think about it? Let's get to that. So first of all, please like the live. We're at 15,000 likes. Can we get to 20,000, please? Okay, Wire Concepts, I see you over there on Instagram. So South Carolina is basically asserting moral authority to block Medicaid funds from abortion-linked providers. That's what they're doing. That is what they're doing. They are basically taking they got this ruling to make it subjective who gets money and who doesn't get money. And this is going to set a precedent for everybody else to do the same thing, that we can subjectively decide who gets money and who doesn't, which means if you have a Republican governor right now, you probably won't give money to abortion-linked providers. And if you end up with a Democratic governor, then they will give money. And this is the precedent that is set. So basically, America is going to become like this big checkerboard where if you want to get an abortion, you got to live in a blue state. And if you don't want to get an abortion, or you don't like the concept of abortions, I guess, it's not like you don't have to not want to get an abortion. It's nothing you have to do. But if you don't like the concept of abortion, you need to be in a red state. And this is pretty much what it's going to be. This is the precedent that the Supreme Court just set. I say, exactly. I'm good with this. Why? Because we have elections for a reason. And every state, I'm not talking about federal elections. I'm talking state level elections. Now, the federal election led to this, but the state level elections are really what it is, because each one of you, if you're a citizen of the United States, you can move about the country as you wish. You can go from one state to the next. You don't like this state, go to that state. You don't like the laws here, go to over there. You can go to whatever state you want that has the laws and rules and precedents that you would like to live by. And you can move based on your principles and what you're about. And every state now can make their own decisions, which is what Donald Trump has been about since the very beginning. He wants to remove federal control over so many things and leave control to the states, where each of us as citizens gets to vote for our governors, vote for our city council people, vote on whatever local ordinances or rules or changes, whatever that we're interested in. And we can shape the state the way that we, the voters, want the state to be. This is how it's supposed to be. I see no problem with this. So if you don't like what's happening in South Carolina, that's okay. Go live in North Carolina or some blue state, whatever state you feel like is blue enough for you to do what you want to do. And they have the rules that you want them to have. But critics say that disproportionately harms low-income women who rely on Medicaid for basic use. I say not really. That's not true. The reason why they believe, or they're framing this to be true, is they're saying that with the Medicaid, this is people who have less income. Okay, that part we'll accept. But them not being able to go to Planned Parenthood is not harming them, because there are other providers who can do the same thing that you can get from Planned Parenthood. You can get it from somewhere else. So Planned Parenthood is not the only option. It's not like you can't go get any help simply because you can't go to Planned Parenthood anymore. That's not true. But what they're framing it as, is as if without Planned Parenthood, you have no other choices. That's not true, but they frame it this way to make it look bad. And this is all politics. This is all part of the political theater. This is part of the optics game. Excuse me. It's about winning the press conference. So they say women who rely on Medicaid for basic care are disproportionately harmed. Not true. Now, in some instances, you may say, well, what if Planned Parenthood is the only place that's within 2 miles of where this woman lives, and the other place that can provide, because you can't go to Planned Parenthood anymore, they're 10 miles away. So now she has to go 10 miles instead of going 2 miles. And that way, could it lead to an issue? Yes. But it's not that this woman can't get care. What that Planned Parenthood was never there in the first place. You wouldn't be complaining about it being 10 miles away, the one that you can go to. All right. So I understand the argument. While at the same time, this is very much semantics. This is what they do in politics. People play these games with languages and they make things sound one way when there's actually another way. And this is what you get. Now, what the Supreme Court has done, they have confirmed that states can define what qualified means, which is a really, really big deal. Many of you may not understand the gravity of that. But if a state can define what qualified is, and there's no black and white definition, then everything is going to come down to who's in charge in that state from year to year, election to election. This matters a ton. And what it should do for all of you, what it should trigger in all of you is more awareness of what's happening at the state level when it comes to your elections. And those of you who care about this stuff, you better be actively voting, because it's going to determine what kind of life you get to live in your state. Now, right now, it's just talking about Planned Parenthood. Some of you already have kids. Some of you are past childbearing age. Some of you are not even thinking about whether you are having kids or not. It's not even something you're even considering. It's not even on your radar. However, if they can do this with things like abortion and childcare and medical care, it can happen in other areas, because what this does every time the Supreme Court makes a ruling is it sets a precedent for how another court, a lower court, may decide things, because what they do is they look at legal precedent. Okay, so the Supreme Court did this in this case. Here's a parallel case. So since the Supreme Court ruled this way in these circumstances, we have similar circumstances with a different situation. We're going to follow the precedent that has already been set legally. So this is going to lead to other things. That's why this matters. Even those of you who are not parents or not trying to be parents, or you already got kids and your kids are like 30 years old, so you're not even, again, this wouldn't be on your radar, you should still care. And I'm explaining to you why you should still care, because the state can tell you what qualified means. Again, that ain't got to only apply in medicine. That can apply in anything. So keep this in mind. And it doesn't have any federal override. So this is all state level. So it's more on the states these days, which, again, what I say, this is great for all of us. Because on a federal level, let's say you lean to the right and you vote for the Republicans because you want their policies. But the country decides to vote left, and the left gets in charge and they start setting policy. If everything is federalized, then they can apply it in a blanket way across all 50 states. But if you lean to the right and then the left wins on the federal level, but at your state level, you can lean to the right and vote right, and your state still gets to have right-leaning policies because it's not federally controlled, then you can still have some say, even if the federal elections don't go the way that you want them to go. In other words, it gives you another option to have your say in the way that you want things to be, which is what the fuck America is supposed to be. It's a country of citizens. It's for the people and by the people. That's the very point. So the more options we have to have control over how things go in our lives, the better off we are. For those of you who are on the political left, you don't like the fact that Trump won. You don't like the fact that right now Congress is all conservative, the House and the Senate. Great, because now you can vote in your state election. If your state is a blue state with a Democratic governor, you can still have a liberal type of policies and lifestyle, I guess, if you want to call it that, based on the way that you voted in your local elections, even though federally everything may be leaning conservative. This is great. Everybody has more options. Everybody has more flexibility. This is a great outcome for all Americans. Now, some say that this opens the door for states to deny providers based on political ideology and not based on medical standards. I say yes. I've already affirmed this like 8 times. Yes, that's exactly what it does. And it's a good thing. Because, again, you can move from one state to another. It's not like you're moving countries. You can just move from one state to another. This might be a bit of an issue. Some of you may not like this concept, but I say this is the trade-off. The trade-off of things not being federalized is, one, good thing is that you can have more control at the state level. And two, if you don't like what's happening in one state, you don't like how it's going in Jersey, move to New York. You don't like New York, move to Pennsylvania. You don't like Pennsylvania, move to Delaware. You don't like Delaware, move to Maryland. So you have options now. Before, you didn't really have options. Taxpayers are no longer forced to indirectly fund abortion services against their values. I believe this is a very, very fair outcome, even if you're a fan of abortion. Other people shouldn't have to fund something that you want to do because this is not a constitutional right. Abortion is not a constitutional right. So if you're a fan or supporter, you're pro-choice, and other taxpayers are not pro-choice, they're pro-life, and they say, I don't want my money going to support this thing that you're into, you should not have a problem with that, even if you're pro-choice. Why? Because, again, pro-choice is not in anywhere is it codified in the Constitution. That's not a constitutional right for you to be pro-choice. You can choose to be pro-choice, but I don't have to pay for it if I don't want to pay for it. If I'm pro-choice, I can't force you to pay for it. Why do I have to have your money to pay for something that I want to do? If I want to do it, then I should be willing to pay for it, or we work with whatever we got that's coming from people who agree with me. This is not some constitutional thing that you just get just because from everybody. And again, this is one that as long as you understand that and you agree with that, then there's no pushback to this point. Now, Medicaid users may now face fewer care options depending on where they live. And my answer is yes, that's true. It's like if the government shut down every McDonald's in the whole country. If they shut down all the McDonald's, now people who want burgers and fries have fewer options. All right, is this true? Yes. That's what happens when you take away an option, is that you have less of them. That doesn't mean that this is some type of hardship necessarily. Again, if that option was never there, you would have to figure it out anyway. So you might as well figure it out because the option's not there anymore. This is just how life works. Again, elections have consequences. This is one of the consequences of the election. The good news is consequences can be good things too, is that if you live in a state where things went the way that you voted, then those consequences are you get to do what you want to do and live how you want to live. This is not going to become a federal thing. Donald Trump, at least not under Donald Trump, is not. Now, Planned Parenthood has no entitlement to government funding, and this ruling made that clear. This is the big issue. The Supreme Court said y'all have no access to government funding. And again, folks, this is why elections matter, because the Supreme Court ruled, basically they went conservative. That's basically what happened here, for those of you who can't read between the lines. The Supreme Court went conservative because the Supreme Court is majority conservative. All the conservatives voted to take money away from Planned Parenthood and say that you have no entitlement to government money. And all the liberals said, well, yes, we do. And 6-3. 6 conservatives, 3 liberals. And why this matters so much, you heard people talking about this. Some of you may remember that during after Trump won in November, some people were throwing out this idea that Biden should try to appoint a new Supreme Court justice to replace Sotomayor because she's older. And I believe she's on some type of machine to help her breathing, et cetera, to replace her, because what they don't want is for her to step down or, God forbid, lose her life during the Trump administration, because then Trump could put another conservative on the court, and then it will be 7-2. And that these people stay on the court forever. Like, there's no term limit to being on the Supreme Court. So people were saying, hey, they might want to do this now. Biden didn't actually do it. It would be pretty hard for him to have gotten it done. I don't think Biden could have done anything after that election. But this is why people were talking about that. How about you replace her, at least fortify that position, put somebody in there who's like 40. They got another, let's say, hopefully 40 years to live. This is the problem that happened with, what was her name? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG. RBG was politically left, and she stayed on the court until she passed. And RBG was replaced by Kavanaugh, right? Do I got that right? I have my timeline right? Was that Kavanaugh who replaced RBG? Somebody confirm that. Make sure I got that correct. And that was during Trump's first term. So RBG, she stayed on the court, and people were saying, hey, how about you get out, because she was getting older, and she didn't get out. She stayed until she passed. And when she passed and it was time to replace her, Trump was president. And of course, he replaced a liberal justice with a conservative justice, and not removed, but the replacement was Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh is conservative. So it basically pushed the court a little bit more to the conservative side. Now, if something were to happen to Jackson, she seems relatively young. And then you got Sotomayor, and who's the other liberal justice on the Supreme Court? Somebody help me out. Who's the other liberal justice on the court? So right now, Sotomayor is the one everyone's talking about. She might be the one who's most likely to die, I guess, is the way people look at this. That was it ACB? No, it was ACB that replaced Ginsburg. Okay, yeah, it might have been ACBD. All right, Amy Coney Barrett. And who is the other liberal justice on the Supreme Court? I got Jackson and Sotomayor is one more. So Coney Barrett replaced RBG. Yes, that part I got. I think, yeah, it was Coney Barrett. Ketanji is one of the liberals. Is it Kagan? All right. Y'all don't know the Supreme Court? I don't know it either. Who's the other person? And we're trying to figure out who's the other liberal justice on the Supreme Court. Can you tell me all the justices on the Supreme Court and which way they lean politically? Let's get clear on this since none of us knows. What we're trying to find out is who is... What happened here? Can you tell me who all the justices are on the Supreme Court and who is the left-leaning one? It's Kagan. Okay. It's not left-leaning one. Should have been left-leaning ones. So the 9 justices. Sotomayor. Okay, Elena Kagan. I don't even know what she looks like. Okay, so Sotomayor was appointed by Obama in 2009. Kagan came in with Obama in 2010. Ketanji Brown Jackson by Biden in 2022. And then on the right, you got Roberts, who's the Chief Justice. He's been in since 2005. Clarence Thomas since 1991. Alito, he came in under W. Clarence Thomas came under the first Bush. Alito came in under the second Bush in 2006. Gorsuch was Trump 2017. Kavanaugh was Trump 2018. And Coney Barrett was Trump 2020. So Trump got 3 of them in there. And yeah, he might get more if something happens to one of the justices who's in there. All right, so someone said, are they all DEI? I don't know. I don't know if I would call them all DEI. Ketanji Brown Jackson just sounded crazy when she had her confirmation. She said, I don't know the woman. That just sounded crazy. So opponents frame this as a rollback of healthcare rights, not just a funding issue. Well, it's neither one. I say it's neither one of these. It's a false binary that this is not a rollback of healthcare rights. It's a rollback of options that you have. It's not even a rollback. It's a removal of an option based on the consequence of an election, which is, again, is the reason why we vote. How many times do you hear Americans talk about, oh, what's the purpose of voting? Because your vote doesn't matter. Your vote's not going to do anything. It's not going to make any difference who you vote for or what you vote for because you end up with the same outcome no matter what you do. A lot of people say that all the time. Well, now we're starting to see what happens when you actually vote, and there are tangible outcomes that come from voting. All right, this is a real thing. And it is not just a funding issue. This is a voting issue, and it's not a rollback of your healthcare rights. Again, this is language games. So states gain more autonomy over how they govern public health and manage Medicaid dollars, which, again, I've said for the 10th time, this is a great thing. Fragmented provider access could deepen national health disparities between red and blue states. I say it could. Yes, you can put the word could in front of damn near any statement, and it's true. So I don't like these could statements because it's just a way of framing things negatively or positively just based on what angle you're trying to take. The legislators now have a legal pathway to defund abortion-connected providers. Is this true? Yes, it is. This is true. Legislators now have a path. All right, we got 29,000 likes, folks. Let's get the likes up. I don't want to have to pull a Kevin Samuels on y'all. Let's get the likes up. Let's get up to 35,000, please. 35,000 likes. Get the likes up. I'm talking to the TikTok audience. Just tap the screen and the likes will go up. Just tap the screen with your finger. Y'all know how to do that. Y'all tap the screen all day. Tap the screen. Let's get the likes up over on TikTok. So legislators now can defund abortion-connected providers. Yes, they can, and they will. This is going to happen in every red state. In case any of you is wondering why does this matter, you don't even live in South Carolina. This is going to happen in every red state. They are going to follow this precedent, and there's more lawsuits coming. And actually, won't even need lawsuits. Now they'll just do it because the lawsuit has already, the ruling by the Supreme Court has basically set the precedent. So legal uncertainty could lead to more lawsuits and confusion about patient rights. So there will be some lawsuits because people are going to try to maybe get the precedent overturned, and let's see if we can fight it. But often when legal precedent is set, that basically becomes the way it is, and people don't even try to fight it anymore. And there are many famous legal precedents once they are set, people pretty much leave it as it is because they're like, okay, well, this is what they rule. Now you got to figure out a way to work around it. So this decision reins in federal overreach and empowers voter-driven local governance, which I already said. Voter-driven local governance, folks, is what all of you should be excited about. Voter-driven local governance. That means the voting that you do at the local level from the state on down is clearly having an impact on what happens in your everyday life and especially the lives of the next generations that come after you. So those of you who get excited about federal elections, I mean, we all can at least talk about them because everybody knows who's who and can argue about it and whatever. But your everyday life is much more affected by what happens at the local level. So again, those of you want a reason to vote, vote in your local elections. If you don't like the federal elections, vote in the local ones. Abortion rights groups will weaponize this ruling to energize their base and raise money. Will that happen? Yes. They probably already started. So anyone who's a fan of abortion or anyone who's an abortion supporter is going to take what just happened. They're going to use this as ammo. Hey, you all got to come support because look what they're doing here. Maybe even Mr. Mamdani in New York, he'll use this as a precedent. What happened in South Carolina, they're going to try to do this and take that away. He might as well add it to his list of things that he's doing if he hasn't already. And polarization around reproductive health care will only intensify in media and politics. Was a good idea for people like me. Not a good idea, but a good outcome for people like me, because then whatever happens, I can just use it as content. So I ain't. What are you looking for? I don't know if I have one.
Don't get up, sorry. You have,
What about this one?
you have a green pen.
Green pen?
I don't think I got any in there.
Okay, just
I want a pen.
Son, I don't have any. All right. So this polarization around reproductive health care will only intensify in media and politics, which is a great thing because it gives all of us something to talk about. Well, if you're a content creator like me, it gives you something to talk about. All that being said, let's get into the comments here. We don't need to do too much more on. I already gave you the background, and I gave it to you straight from the Associated Press. Shout out to the AP with their information. Let's get into this topic here today. What do we think about this? With now, it's not so much about Planned Parenthood because I'm not in the market for aborting a pregnancy, and I don't know if any of you is either. But the precedent that this is setting for the states being able to make decisions about who can and who can't get money and what you have access to based on election outcomes, that's the reason why this is a big deal. And it's not lost to me that the P. Diddy trial, we're going to have some answers pretty soon. So that one will be talked about probably on Monday, because I think they're sending it to the jury. They're probably going to send it to the jury to start deliberating today. I don't know if the jury's going to decide within a day. If they do, then guarantee we'll be talking about this on Monday. But we'll probably talk about it on Monday anyway. So let's see what we got going on in comments here. Let's see. California, Fitzgerald Styles, user 529 from Ohio. Shout out to Ohio. Monica from California. Evelina Singer, thank you. Linda, thank you. Said the baby is adorable. Lady Roro said, shame on the Supreme Court. Planned Parenthood is so much more than providing abortions. It's not so much more, Lady Ro. I understand your direction that it does more than just abortions, but what is Planned Parenthood's reputation? We all know their reputation and what they do more than anybody else does is abortions. So while you are technically correct that they do other things, several other things, the main thing that they're known for, their reputation, and the thing they do more than everybody else is abortions. So it's fair to attack them. Lady said women's health is at risk. No, Lady Ro. No, we're not doing that. I already addressed that. Eric said 3% of their services are abortions. Well, that 3%, assuming that your stat is correct, and I'm not even verifying your stat. If it is 3%, Eric J., that 3% is more than anyone else in the country does when it comes to abortions. So does it matter? Do they deserve their reputation? The answer is yes, they do. If 3% of my time is spent, let's say, talking about Donald Trump, but I talk about Donald Trump more than everybody else, I still deserve the reputation of being a person who always talks about Donald Trump because I'm doing it more than everyone else. So reputations are subjective. It's subjective and relative based on how do you compare to everyone else in the market. Lady Ro, women on Medicaid need Planned Parenthood more than ever. Well, they better move to a blue state. Lady Roro said, this is so upsetting. This brings women's health back 60 years. No, you're doing too much. I get the dramatization, but come on. Connor Davis said, bro, use your knowledge to educate people with facts instead of Fox News propaganda, your fate. This is coming from the Associated Press. Is that propaganda? And all they were doing was actually reporting. They're not even offering an opinion. All they did was report. And you said educate people with facts. Connor Davis, facts don't matter. If educating people with facts mattered, then there'd be a line of people standing outside the library right now. But look where you are right now, Connor Davis. You're on TikTok. Are you on TikTok looking for facts? Because if so, why? If you're looking for facts, you should be at the library right now. Why are you not there? Sunside said tangible harm. How about having an abortion? Yeah, exactly. User said Ohio has a constitutional amendment for women's reproductive rights. And what's the amendment say? Tavian said, sounds like a dictatorship. No one should be able to tell us anything. Well, I don't know what you mean about that. That's a false binary. There's a big gap between dictatorship and nobody telling you anything. Because nobody telling you anything is anarchy. And I'm not sure most Americans want to live under anarchy because there'd be savageness happening in the street. And I'm not sure many of you are ready for that. Nor do you want it. User said, as opposed to insurance telling you when, where, what concerning treatment. Well, that's a different conversation, user. I get what you're saying. Different conversation. Tavian said, everyone should have the exact same care as the next person. None of us is better than the next. This is a false binary. I get the direction of your point. Everyone should have the exact same care. In certain worlds, if we had universal health care, then yes, we would. But we don't have universal health care. So I get that direction. And since we don't have universal health care and everyone gets basically what either they are able and willing to pay for or not, then we end up in the situation that we're in. And that's where we are right now. None of us is better than the next. I'm going to challenge that point. Yes, some people are better than the next person. Yes, they are. Some people are better than the next. I don't mean better like on a basic human level. I'm human, you're human. But somebody might be better than the next person at doing business. Another person might be better at going to the gym. Another person is better at making steak. Another person is better at running a couple miles. So different people have different skill levels. So some people are better than the next person. I get what you're trying to say. You're saying it on a moral, humanistic level. I'm saying it on a more literal level that some people are literally better than others at different things. And this is a reality of life. So nobody's better than the next person. That's a preschool concept. Sherry 1967 said, I'll never understand why people want so many government programs to rely on. Because it removes responsibility and accountability. That's why. Renee said, Planned Parenthood also offers contraceptives. Learn how to protect yourself, ladies. Yes, and they are still there, and you could get contraceptives from CVS for like $6. Last time I checked. So, Kareem, thank you for the follow. Lahek said, wait, didn't Obama assure us again and again that we could keep our doctor? And that's a whole other conversation. Antonius, thank you. You like the tie. Sherry, congrats on the gifter badge. Thank you for the rose, Renee. Carla, good morning. Good to see you. Well, Heck said, vote in your state to get what you want. Exactly. And if you don't get what you want, move to a different state. Daniel said, isn't it only that Medicaid won't pay for it instead of a state ban? Yes, they didn't ban Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood still exists. It's just Medicaid is no longer funding them. It's not even that much money. But it sets a precedent. And this is what people are getting excited about. Well, Heck said, contraception is cheaper. Yes, it is. But also that requires people to actually be responsible and accountable. And you're asking a lot. Well, heck, that's a little bit too much. Dwayne Mitchell, Detroit in the house. Shout out to Detroit. Outdoor Sarah said almost 80% of women give birth on Medicaid. Well, Medicaid still exists. It's just Planned Parenthood is no longer a choice. Outdoor Sarah said, have you ever tried to book an OB/GYN appointment? This is what we call a Socratic trap, which has nothing to do with the topic here today. Why are you asking this question? Paige said, we need Planned Parenthood. As a woman, we need it. Planned Parenthood still exists. It's just you can't pay for it with Medicaid in the state of South Carolina. And soon other states will follow suit. But it's only going to be the red states. So if you need Planned Parenthood, Paige, I'm assuming you live in a blue state. So Outdoor Sarah and Paige, tell me what state you live in. You live in a blue state? I'm guessing both of you live in blue states. You're saying these things that you need. Okay. If you live in a blue state, you got it. Nothing has changed for you. And it ain't going to change for you. That's the good news. Again, I explain this. The good news is if you live in a blue state, then you will always have access to this stuff because they're going to be more staunch in supporting Planned Parenthood simply because the red states are going against it. So this is beautiful. This is exactly what the United States is supposed to be. So let's see. Paige. No, I missed that one. Irma, good to see you. Thank you for the gift. Courtney, good to see you in here. Paige says someone just likes to hear himself talk. Well, Paige, I'm literally live streaming. What would you like me to do? Everything I do here is I'm talking. Even when I'm reading your comment, I'm talking. So what would you like me to do? You want me to just sit here quietly and just stare at the screen? Would that entertain and engage you? So Sarah says, tell me about the availability of a gynecologist in your area and if they will see, and your comment cut off. Why you keep talking about gynecologists? They were not mentioned in this stream. Traditional said, Planned Parenthood is in every black neighborhood. Yes, they are. Actively. Outdoor Sarah said, even when I was making 100K a year, I couldn't get a GYN appointment. Outdoor Sarah, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Kiwi said, good. Needs to be more back at state level control. Yes, it does. It was a great thing. Mahek said, advocating your state if you're concerned. Yes, and you can advocate by voting. Kiwi said, absolutely agree. We need our states to be more autonomous. Yes, it was exactly what it's supposed to be. Again, there's a reason why it's called the United States. It's not one group that decides all the rules. Like, that's the federalization. We want it to be state level. We want everything state level. So then every state can decide how they want things to be. You can vote red, you can vote blue. You got a lot of choices. It's 50 states. Hubert said, you need to understand that financially, people can't just get up and move the way you're offering. Yes, I understand that. I don't need to understand that. I do understand it. What I would say is if you live in a red state, for example, and you decide you want to get, or you decide that you like abortion, then you might want to think about using contraception instead of whining about abortion simply because in your state you no longer can get it or you no longer have access as easily as you did before. In other words, you need to do what human beings are amazing at doing. It is called adjusting to circumstances. So yes, it's not easy for you to just get up and move from Tennessee to fucking Colorado, but it is easy for you to make different decisions in the first place so that moving from Tennessee to Colorado is not the only option that you have for dealing with your life's circumstances. So that's what you actually got to do. So it's a way of pushing the conversation into a point when people say that, well, it's not so easy to just move from one state to another, or even travel from one state to another to get an abortion. Okay, what did you do to put you in a position where you even needed an abortion in the first place, or feel like you want an abortion in the first place? You had unprotected sex with a person you weren't trying to have a baby with or start a family with. Why'd you do that? See, if we go back to that part, you don't have to live in any state to think on that level. All right, every state has a Walgreens or a CVS or a Walmart, right? Any of you live in a state that doesn't have Walgreens, CVS, or Walmart, at least one of the three. Everybody lives in a state that has one of those, right? Which means you can control whether you even get pregnant or not in the first place. Which means don't matter if Planned Parenthood is around or not, or if Medicaid can pay for it, because you don't need Planned Parenthood because you planned to not get into Parenthood by using contraception. So how about that? What state you got to live in to do that? See, this is the part that they don't talk about. And people on the political right are not very good at putting this into the proper context and saying it the right way to knock down bullshit coming from people on the political left. I'm talking about the politicians, not the everyday people. Let's see. Yes, tap the screen, everybody. We're at 50,000 likes. Can we get up to 55,000? Kiwi said, I have no idea how you came across my feed, but very happy that you did. I agree with that, Kiwi. Shout out to TikTok for bringing me across your feed. And I'm happy that you did too. Renting Palm Beach, thank you for the share. Traditional said, pull a Kevin Samuels, Dre. I might in a minute. Get my likes up, folks. We're at 51,000 likes. Let's get to 55,000, please. 55,000. Courtney, good morning. Thank you for the hearts and the go popular. Shina H, good morning. Traditional said, the government should not be controlling what the state could be doing. Yes, it was exactly how it was designed. That's the design of America. Chelsea said, Planned Parenthood is more than abortion. Yes, we know. This has been discussed. We've talked about that several times here so far, Chelsea. Carolyn said, is it really that hard to obtain and take birth control? There's so many options these days. No, it's not hard at all. But again, once you give people a get out of jail free card, such as, okay, you can go be sexually reckless, get pregnant, and then you can just go over here and we'll take care of it. And it doesn't cost you anything out of your pocket. No skin off your back. People will take that. And if you take away this handout, if you will, then people get mad simply because they had a privilege and you took it away. But they don't understand the logic that what they were given was a privilege in the first place. They assume it as a right and not a privilege. Anytime you give someone a privilege and you keep giving it to them over and over and over again, to the point that they start to look at it as a normal part of their lives, they start to treat it as if it's a right instead of understanding that this is actually a privilege. And that's a human nature issue. And the United States put ourselves as a country in this position by making it so normal for people to just go get abortions. And there have been times when people have completely, very strongly advocated for this. So that's the problem here. It's not that people can't just go and get birth control or use contraception or practice abstinence. People know how to do all those things. But if you say, hey, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You don't have to do any of that responsible discipline stuff. How about you just do whatever you want? And then you can come over here and push a button or two, and we'll do this, and we'll just undo your bad decision. People are going to take advantage of that because it requires less discipline. That's the issue here. It's like if people got overweight and all you had to do was go take some Ozempic, then hey, it doesn't matter if you get overweight. You can just go take these pharmaceuticals and we'll fix the problem. But if the only way to fix the overweightness was you had to actually go to the gym and work out and do cardio and all these other things, then people will probably think twice about eating that candy bar or that ice cream. But when you make it easy for people to undo bad decisions, they'll keep making bad decisions. That's the real issue. Kiwi said, I have used them for women's health, but they certainly are not the only game in town. Yes, exactly. Clinics and hospitals are available for women's health at reasonable costs and with Medicaid. Yeah, Planned Parenthood is not the only game in town. People are acting like it's the only one that they have, or this is going to cause some sort of hardship for you. Okay, well, hardship is kind of part of life. I mean, I don't know if that's news to people. Kiwi said, doesn't take it back 60 years. Can we be real? Leave the feels out of it. Well, Kiwi, you're asking people to be completely logical, which is a bad strategy. The feels are necessary when you don't have logic on your side. That's the reason why you get these arguments. You get people making emotional arguments because they can't make a logical one, because any logical argument is going to make them look ridiculous. Liz said, it's ridiculous. People calling PP healthcare is the opposite of healthcare. Well, Planned Parenthood does a whole lot more than just abortions. They do a lot of other things, but their reputation is abortions. Renee said, bottom line, Planned Parenthood is federally funded. That is the issue. Protect yourself. Yeah, that's one issue. Captain Car Wash said, if I want to pay for better care, I will pay for better health care. Yes. And this is Captain Car Wash is assuming you have money to pay. So the arguments that people are making is, what if you don't have the money? Renee said, money does not care about morals. That is true. Spike said, it's Todd Bridges. What are you talking about, Spike? Are you disagreeing with something that I said? If so, what is it? Murphy the Mutt, thank you for the share. Cosmically Poor said, that isn't true. Planned Parenthood also relied on Title IX funds. Now 7 states without. 7 states now have no Title IX fund, low-income clinics because of that. Also let in religious clinics. Ones who have had documented cases of denying patients based on moral decisions. Awful. That is not awful, because the Supreme Court just ruled that you can pretty much do that. Now it's set that this is the way it is. So this is not an awful thing. This is just what it is. Marky Man said, Newsom said he will fly you in if you live in a banned state and California will pay for it. Well, there you go, everybody. So any of you's concerned about getting an abortion and you can't afford it, then call Governor Gavin Newsom of California. According to Marky Man, Newsom said he will fly you into California and get it done for you at no cost. Was this at no cost? SB Hart says, amazing how people have such a hard time making good decisions. Perfect comment. Thank you. What people don't have a hard time with it, SB Hart, is that when you remove the consequences for bad decisions, people will make more of them. That's how it works. If every bad decision had an immediate consequence, people would make a lot fewer bad decisions. But since many of them have no consequences, people just move recklessly. And again, that's human nature. That's not a political point. This is a human nature point. Stacy D said, I need to move to a red state. My blue state is ridiculous. What state are you in, Stacy? Cosmic Report said, contraception isn't 100%. Can't fully control said situation. You're supporting government overreach. Cosmic Report, that's a reach. You want to talk about overreach? What you just said is an overreach. Wearing a condom is very effective. Is it 100%? No, nothing's 100%, but it's pretty close. As close as you can get without actually abstaining from sex. So contraception is very effective. And you said can't fully control said situation is a bullshit point. I'm discarding that point. You said I'm supporting government overreach. That's nonsense. What I'm supporting is less government overreach because they're giving it to the state rather than giving it to the feds. Courtney said you ask people to be responsible, and that's a big no-no. Yeah, it was a big request to most people. Cosmically said, you assume values in one's character when you describe them as reckless. That's your bias. Well, if I call something reckless, then I'm assuming that someone did something reckless. Reckless does not mean I'm talking about your values and character. That's incorrect. Cosmically Poor, you're in your emotions right now. I need to take a deep breath. So let's address this, because you get the straw man of the day, first of all. Straw man of the day by Cosmically Poor. Now, Cosmically Poor, this is a different type of straw man. This is a straw man when someone's actually pointing out exactly what they're asserting rather than alluding to it, which is usually the straw man that I point out. This is a more direct straw man, where Cosmically is saying that they're telling me what I'm assuming. I don't have to make any assumptions on this subject. he or she, I don't know who this is, assume values and character when you describe something as reckless. And not describe them, the person, as reckless. So let's point out there's more than one fallacy in here. First of all, you're saying that I'm describing a person as reckless. No, I'm not. I'm describing behavior as reckless. A smart, disciplined, responsible person can do a reckless thing. So I'm describing the behavior, not the person. That's number one. Number two, when I describe your behavior as reckless, then that is not me saying that your character is reckless. I'm saying the action that you took right here is reckless. Now, I'm also not assuming anything about your values because, again, I'm talking about your isolated actions. We can separate the person from the activity. A person who has a reputation that goes in this direction can do something that goes in that direction. That happens all the time with human beings. And then you said, that's my bias. No, it's not a bias because as I just broke it down, I'm not making any assumptions. So you get the straw man of the day. We don't have the trophy for you, but you do get recognition. Congratulations. And then another straw man cosmically is on a roll here. So let's keep going. Ironic, as you just said, assume as part of your response, characterizing people as having no discipline. When I say people who have no discipline, again, I'm talking more directionally in their behavior, not saying that them as an entire person. And it's a bigger point. You have to understand that's a figure of speech. I'm not saying that this person has no discipline at all in all of their life. I don't know. And when you start splitting hairs in this way, it looks like you're just looking for something to argue for. But if you continue this line of reasoning, and I'm being very generous to you by calling this a line of reasoning, then I'm gonna have to start ignoring your comments. But let's see what else you got. Next thing is, it isn't easy to make a choice to abort. It's emotionally distressful and a hard decision. So cosmically, you must have been through some abortions. It seems this has triggered you in some way. But anyway, let's continue. Daniel said, you're not directionally wrong. I'm in my situation because of my own stupidity. Yes, exactly. I know I'm not directionally wrong. But sometimes you got to break down people's emotions. And sometimes you say something that directionally they understand it, but they pretend to not understand it because they want something to argue against so that they can feel justified in disagreeing with you. Because if you disagree with me on a logical level, then you ain't got nothing. Marky Man said, yes. Cosmically said, your objective reason, it isn't awful because you say so and agree with SCOTUS. Your wording here needs to be fixed. I'm not quite understanding your question. Stacy said, Maryland with Governor West Spinmore. Oh, yeah, West Maryland. Stacy said, my daughter lives in Florida, so I am tempted daily to pack it up and go. You get tempted every day. You still didn't do it. Keely said, people have such a hard time separating action from the person. Keely, they really don't. They just pretend that they do when they hear something that they disagree with. So they try to make it seem like you said something that is like just blanket wrong or ethically wrong or emotionally wrong, because if they understood the logic, then they wouldn't have anything to argue with. Most people have pretty good logical understanding. Not everybody can explain things logically. Not everybody can articulate things logically, but most people understand it. But when someone hears something that bothers them or upsets them or strongly provokes them in some way, they come up with these other arguments to make it seem as if the person who said the thing that they're arguing against, they did something wrong when you know exactly what you're doing most of the time. Now, sometimes people just don't have an understanding, but most of the time, I don't think that's the case. Especially when someone just keeps going on and on. They know exactly what they're doing. So cosmically said, this decision by SCOTUS is basically to further support a religious/ethical move to support Christian nationalism. Now, I wouldn't go that far. One thing we can say that it's doing, and if you were talking to a bunch of people who are supporters of Planned Parenthood, cosmically poor, you would probably get a bunch of claps for saying what you just said. I disagree. What SCOTUS's decision is objectively, not basically, because when you say something is basically, anytime somebody says, well, basically, what they're about to do is give you their version of what happened, which is not what actually happened. Objectively, what SCOTUS just did is they have set a precedent that each state can decide who gets Medicare funding and who does not get Medicaid funding. That's what actually happened objectively. So when you put the word basically in there, what you're about to do is put your own opinion in there, and you're going to tie it to something that objectively happened. This is where you start conflating opinion with fact, and then you present it as truth. This is how people get misled these days. And often it's because there's some emotionally triggering thing within the opinion, tie it to a fact, and then when someone challenges you, you say, well, it's a fact. This is what just happened. And this is why journalism no longer exists. Because now everybody talks this way. And the people who used to be responsible for telling us the actual truth and being objective and breaking things down, they're doing it now. So now everybody's doing it. So now we have no journalism. And this is why a lot of people can't discern fact from fiction, truth from opinion, or objectivity from opinion. And then you get these mixed arguments. And unless you are good enough at pointing out the pieces of someone's argument and showing where they're logically flawed, it's very easy to be misled and fooled by people who are really good with the rhetoric. But I've seen enough of this, so I know how to catch the nonsense. Renee said, is the decision to weigh down with someone you can get abortions just not paid for by the federal government? Yes, you also keep the baby. Novel idea. I mean, you did create it. Another thing you could do. So, Cosmically said, the state can decide, so not the person of their own medical choice overreach. That's not true. The state does not decide. The state just says, we're not going to give money to Planned Parenthood. You can still go there. The state's just not giving them money. You go somewhere else that does abortions. Planned Parenthood is not the only place that does abortions. Or you keep the baby. Or you get not gotten pregnant in the first place. These are all, you have a whole bunch of options. The state is not deciding anything. All the state did was say, we're not paying for it anymore. That's it. That's the only thing that they did. And not the person of their own medical choice. That's false. That is factually false. You still have a choice to go to Planned Parenthood if you want to. Only thing that changed is that the state's not going to pay for it. You still have the option of going there. So what you're saying here is factually incorrect. And you're exposing yourself the more you talk. I understood the emotional direction of your point when you first started leaving comments. But now the more you talk, the more you're exposing the lack of logic here. You don't even understand what actually happened. You're making arguments that are factually wrong. So we're at 66,000 likes. Let's get to 70,000 likes, folks. Get the likes up. Fan club completed the first stage of the quest. Thank you. Carlos said the states decide the speed limits for the highways. Is that overreach? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it sounds really good to say things like that. And who decides what overreach is? Who's the judge of overreach? That would probably be the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court just said that a state can decide who is qualified, who's not qualified to receive our money, which is all based on who got voted for by the people. And the government is by the people and for the people. So it's actually doing it exactly as it's supposed to be done. So if you don't agree with what one state does, you just go to a different state because they're doing it differently. And then you get the life that you want to have. It's a beautiful thing about the United States. Let's say, so Cosmic says, in this case, yes. Okay, so now here comes the shift of the goalpost right here, folks. Pay attention. So Cosmic left like 20 comments trying to make this argument. I just broke it down and told them why it was some bullshit. And now they're saying, in this case, yes. So they just agreed. And now they're going to make a whole new argument. Right, you got to notice this. This is what people do. So now here's a whole new argument. Trump expanding Title 10 wasn't directly about payment when it was funding to said clinics total. Well, you're talking about Trump. Trump is federal. The state level. This whole situation is a state level. Papa, and you just shifted the goalpost. You got 20 comments trying to make one argument. Now you just moved the goalpost trying to make a completely different one. So you lost some credibility in this process. Whatever amount you had when you showed up. Papa Lanyet said, what's the best advice for a 25 youngster before 30? That question is way too broad, Papa. Tell me something about this 25-year-old and where they're trying to go. Then I can give you a better answer or ask a more clarifying question. Howie Bartlett said, that's not fair to the Dems. They want it paid for. Well, of course. I mean, the Democratic side seems to, especially with Biden. Actually, we can go back as far as Obama, then to Biden, and then to Harris, that they seem to be leaning very strongly towards we want to federalize as many things as possible. I'm not a fan of that as a general concept, regardless of what side was doing. I'm not a fan of that simply because federalizing things, first of all, the federal government is very inefficient and ineffective at doing damn near everything except defense spending. And secondly, the more things that are federalized, the more control the federal government has and the more say they have over your everyday life. I don't want that. I'm not dependent on the government for anything, but I don't want them having a say over my life. I'd rather the state have a say, then even smaller, the local area have a say, and even smaller, nobody have a say. The ultimate outcome is nobody have a say over what you do in your life. Your rights are granted by God. They are protected by the government, not the other way around. And a lot of people have it backwards. And abortion is not a right. So Tex-Mex Girl said, thank you for explaining. Some people just don't get it. Cosmic says, when you said Title IX, by the way, earlier, that was related to this, but nice try. Well, Title IX, Title 10, what's the difference in the argument? There's no difference. At this point, you're splitting hairs. I get it. I mean, sometimes when you try to make a logical argument, I broke it down, you try to move the goalposts, now you're trying to find some detail that you can be right about. I understand this is normal human discourse. Most human beings do this when they run out of points. But if you got a different argument, you can make it, but we're not going to. I gave you a significant amount of attention here. Spin. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. AJ Ward said, what rights did God give? All of them. Every one of them that you got are granted by God. They're not granted by the government. So whatever right you think you have, it's from God, not from the government. The government's job is to protect rights, not to grant rights. As a general point. Howie Bartwick, good morning. D said, you think it's normal because that's all you do. Think what's normal? What are you referring to? Knuckles said, that's literally not true. What? What is literally not true? What are you referring to? Cosmic says, it isn't about me. My points stand. Yeah, your points stand. I even read them out loud and told you what parts you had wrong. I can list it out on the moves to Christian nationalism. Well, Christian nationalism is not the topic. So if you have an issue with Christian nationalism, you should do your own live stream. You clearly have a lot to say. Knuckles said, rights are legal doctrine. Your rights are granted by God. They are legal. Legal doctrine does not mean that they're not granted by God. I mean, you're talking about something completely different. Your rights are granted by God. Just because they're in legal doctrine does not mean that that's where they came from. They came from God and they can be legally indoctrinated. That doesn't mean that's where they started. So you're missing the point here. So we're at 72,000 likes. Can we get to 75,000, please? Papa said the direction must be a first generation multimillionaire. You talking about yourself? Why do you put multimillionaire in quotation marks? It's not a saying. It's the actual thing. And what's your vehicle, Papa Langette? What are you doing? Are you in real estate? Are you an entrepreneur? Do you have a job? You trying to make it to the NFL? What are you trying to do? I need more context. These said, as you said, you said it's normal for humans to move the goalposts and other points. That's what you do. When did I move the goalposts? I didn't move the goalposts. The goalpost here today is the topic you can see right there. The topic is Planned Parenthood. I read the information straight from the Associated Press. And then I told you what I think about it. And the general point of what I think about it is that SCOTUS just basically ruled, there's the word basically for you. They ruled that each state can decide who gets money or who doesn't based on funding for healthcare. That's what SCOTUS just decided, and they set a precedent. What goalpost did I move? And why would I need to move the goalposts? My live stream. I don't need to move the goalposts. I can set the goalposts wherever I want. I don't need to move it. If I don't want to talk about something, I just won't talk about it. Let's see. Cosmic says Christian nationalism influences choices of states. Well, Christian nationalism is not the topic. Why you keep bringing it up? You're trying to make the conversation about something that is not about. The topic here today is not Christian nationalism. So whatever your thoughts are on that subject, forever hold your peace. But I am not talking about Christian nationalism today. But since you brought it up, I will say that, first of all, Christian is not some negative thing. Why people throw out Christian nationalism like it's some type of pejorative? Why is it wrong to be a Christian and to be a nationalist? To be a Christian means you follow Christianity. Is there something wrong with that? Put it in the comments. Give me a yes or no in the comments, everybody. I'm going to ask two questions. Number one, do you have a problem with Christianity? I have no problem with Christianity. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a practicing Christian. I don't have a problem with Christianity. Who has a problem with Christianity? Put yes if you do have a problem with it. Put no if you don't have a problem with it. I have no problem with Christianity. I have no problem with Christians. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of respect for people who follow any religion, whatever religion it may be. Christianity, Judaism, Islam. I respect everybody who follows a religion. You know why I have a lot of respect for people who follow religions, especially those who follow it like strictly, is that they have a set of principles. I respect anyone who follows a religion because religious people have a set of principles that are written down that they can't change when they feel like it, and they have to follow those principles if they are indeed following that religion. The people you need to worry about are the people who don't have a religion and they pretty much do whatever the hell they feel like doing. And every day they can change their mind as to what their principles are because they have no founding principles by which they govern their lives. Those are the people you need to be worried about. The Christians, I'm not worried about in a general sense. I'd rather somebody who's following a religion because at least I know you got some principles. And I can go look up what your principles are supposed to be and see if you're following them. It doesn't mean everybody has to be perfect. It doesn't make me the police. But I respect someone who follows a religion because at least I know you got some principles. It's the people with no principles that you got to be concerned with. All right, those are the ones who can cause problems. And it's not to say that a Christian can't commit a crime, et cetera, et cetera. All right, directionally get my point. The other question is nationalists. Any of you got a problem with a nationalist? What is a nationalist? A nationalist, let's get a definition of nationalist because people throw this word around also in a very pejorative way. Give me a definition of nationalist and why people seem to use it as a pejorative these days. Now that's what you call a leading question. So definition of a nationalist is someone who believes in the supremacy of their own nation's interests, often prioritizing national sovereignty, culture, and identity above international cooperation or global considerations. So it can be mild, such as patriotism and support for strong national identity, or it can be hardline, such as xenophobia, anti-immigration, isolationism, or even ethnic supremacy. So there's a wide range of what a nationalist can be. It's like somebody who is into the gym. You got people who go to the gym and stay in good shape. Then you got people who they go to the gym and they become a fit pro and they got muscles on top of muscles. There's a range for how much you can be doing the thing. So nationalist is it's a subjective term because you can use it in a lot of different ways based on what I'm reading here. It's used as a pejorative to associate people with extremism. There's a history of abuse, like Germany. There's anti-globalism and isolationism. And then there's political branding. That's the biggest thing. That's what's being used here. So Cosmic sounds like you're using it as a political branding. You're saying Christian nationalism in a negative way, using it in a negative way to make it seem like it's a rhetorical weapon to imply that someone may be bigoted, aggressive, or closed-minded. You didn't say those words. I'm just as an example. I have no problem with a nationalist. Again, there's levels to nationalism. So when I say I have no problem with a nationalist, there are levels to nationalism. Right? Same way I have a problem with someone owning a gun. There's levels to what you do with a gun. Right? So, yes, I have no problem with people owning guns because the levels of what you do with it. You can use a gun for protection. You can use it for peace of mind. You can use it to commit crime. I don't have a problem with the general point of someone owning one. I have no problem with a Christian nationalist. That means you support America. You're about America first, which our president has literally been standing on for 10 years. And you're also a practicing Christian with some principles that you're supposed to be abiding by. Why would I have a problem with that? I have no problem with a Christian nationalist. So, any of you got a problem with a nationalist? How many of you like nationalists? Give me a yes or no in the comments. What do you feel about nationalists? The Champ Round 10 says, just buzzwords the left use to demonize people who oppose what they believe. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Christian nationalist is used as a pejorative to try to make somebody look bad. But when you break it down, what is wrong with it? Michelle, good morning. Knuckles said, which of those gods grant your rights that you said are granted by God? Whichever God you look up to. Whatever one you worship, whoever your God is, they granted you your rights. Cosmic said, patriotism is cool. Nationalism is not, is the extreme of support at all costs. Okay, now here's the issue with calling somebody that. It's the same as calling somebody racist, Cosmic. So let's address this. You said patriotism is fine, but nationalism is not. Well, according to what I just read, nationalism has a very wide range. Patriotism is a part of nationalism. The thing is, you say nationalism is the extreme of support at all costs. My question to you is, who do you know who actually will raise their hand and say, yes, I'm that person who is at the extreme of support at all costs, and I'm against everything other than these, and I am in agreement with all the negative things that you would say a nationalist is. So cosmically, if you defined a nationalist and I said, go find me somebody who agrees that they're all those things, how many people would actually agree to that? I doubt there will be very many. It's the same as accusing somebody of being a racist. Yes, you can accuse, but racism is a way of thinking. It is not a action. So you can accuse someone of it, but can you prove that somebody actually is it is a whole different thing. So again, it's another pejorative. Gary Gray said, yes, and my life is going pretty well because of it, but not perfect. Great. Ivan, thank you. Pampa said, basically, religious people are programmed. Well, yes, religious people are programmed because there's a program to follow. There's nothing wrong with being programmed, folks. I'm programmed. not for a religion, but I'm programmed in many ways. I'm programmed around mindset, strategy, systems, accountability, execution, performance, producing results. I am very much programmed. Every human being is programmed. So Papa Langette, you said that as if it's a negative thing. You're programmed too. The question is, what are you programmed for? Is what you actually need to be asking yourself. Not if you're programmed. Every human being is programmed. Subconscious mind controls 85% of our thoughts. So you are programmed. It's just a matter of what's in that program is what you should be asking. Mike said, non-religious have principles. They're just not built on myths and superstition. Well, the first sentence I agree with. I'm non-religious. I have principles. I even wrote them down in a book. I got a book called The 12 Work on Your Game Commandments. I can show you right here. The founding principles. You see it right there on the cover. All right, so I'm not here just talking shit to y'all. All right, you see the word principles right there. The founding principles of what Work on Your Game is about. I wrote them down right here so nobody can tell me that I'm lying when I tell you what one of my principles are. And they're not just built on myths and superstition. I don't know if we would call religion a myth or a superstition. I get saying that if you're trying to make religion look bad, if that's what you're trying to do, well, it sounds like that's what you're doing. I wouldn't go that far as to say that. Religions are built on belief because they are stories, literally stories that have been handed down. But at the same time, Mike, the things that you believe, at some point, somewhere, something happened in your life that became a story or was handed to you, and that's where you got your principles from. Human beings, we move about based on narrative. We all have a narrative in our own heads. We got a narrative of our own lives, and we share narratives with each other. That's how we have humankind. That's literally what history is. It's just narrative. They got passed down. Does that make it all true? No. Does it make it false? No. Does it make it bad or good? Neither one. It's just what it is. Kat said that I'm a nationalist. Yeah, me too. I'm a nationalist. Knuckles says superiority is the crux there. The problem is supremacy. Again, who actually would say I'm that person? Like people say white supremacy is a problem in America. Okay, go find me somebody who calls himself a white supremacist. It ain't that many people. The number of people who get accused of being white supremacists versus the number of people who actually admit to being a white supremacist is like 100 to 1. That's the problem with these terms: superiority, extreme, nationalist, in a negative way. Yes, you can accuse a bunch of people of that, but how many of the people you accuse actually say, yes, I'm that? Very few. So that's why when it becomes a rhetorical game, you're using it as a pejorative to make people look bad, and the very people you're accusing of it says, I'm not that. And then you say, well, you are because you did this. And they say, no, that means this. And it becomes a whole argument. Nothing ever gets resolved. So again, you throw these terms around and try to make people look bad. Why can't we just talk about the logical truth of where they're actually at, as opposed to what you're trying to make it look like they're at? And that's what people end up doing when they hear something that they disagree with, or they see something that they disagree with. They come up with ways to try to make it look bad rather than just addressing it as it is. Because if it's bad as it is, then you should be able to make it look bad without trying to use pejoratives or try to push it to the extreme. If somebody says something that's stupid, I can make what you say look stupid without changing your words, because what you said was stupid. So I don't have to change it into something that you didn't say, because what you said on the surface is stupid enough that if I expose it, then it'll look like exactly what it is. I don't have to play these games with you and try to change your words into something different. And if what you said wasn't stupid, then that's okay. I can still disagree with it. So let's see. Liz said, then there's people who love their country. Exactly. So people who love their country are getting called nationalists. So people who said, yeah, America first, secure our borders, build the wall, get the immigrants out of here who don't have proper documentation, they're nationalists. How are they nationalists? And if they are nationalists, why is that a bad thing? Well, actually, they are nationalists, not how are they nationalists. They are nationalists. I'm a nationalist. I support America over every other country. Now, if you ask me what country do I support the most, the United States of America. All right, that's my number one country I support is the United States of America. Am I a nationalist? I believe America is the best country. Does that make me a nationalist? I want anyone who's here in this country without proper documentation out. Does that make me a nationalist? At what point do I become a nationalist? Please tell me. And is that a bad thing? AJ said, Christian nationalism has had bad connotations for decades. Is not new that it's bad. What's new is that people are throwing it around more often, especially around Donald Trump, and they're trying to use it as a pejorative. And I didn't hear people talking about Christian nationalism mostly until Trump came around. That's when I first started hearing about it. It became more mainstream. Cosmic said, yes, because to apply one's morals or values on others to assert religious justification of wrong. Okay, this is an interesting approach. So you take one's morals or values on others to assert religious justification of law? Well, let's think about how America started. America is built on principles of Christianity. America is not a Christian country. We were built as a country on principles of Christianity. One of the reasons why slavery got removed is because the principles of Christianity, a lot of people, even those who own slaves, said this is not biblical what we're doing. This does not align principle wise with what we are practicing. We're not practicing what we preach. We have to get rid of this. And those are the principles that America was built on, was Christian directionally Christian principles. So to say, what did I miss here? There was a comment that I was reading. I lost it. No, it's right here. To assert religious justification of law, well, it depends on what the law is. And it depends on the justification. So those are kind of slippery terms here. So I can't talk about those in a blanket way. But to apply one's morals or values on others, well, who are we talking about? Who's this one that we're referring to? Because the only ones who are capable of even doing this are court justices who've been appointed by a governance that we elected. So if a person decides that I'm going to apply my morals, where is this? I lost my spot again. I'm going to apply my opinions, my morals and values onto others. The only person who's capable of doing that is an elected official. How'd they get elected? Because they ran for election and we voted for him. So if we vote for Donald Trump and he decides these are my morals and values and I'm going to push through Congress some laws that are based on the way that I think, we can't complain about that because we voted for it. This is what a democratic process looks like. So who are you talking about when you say to apply one's morals and values? The only people who are capable of actually doing that are people who've been elected. And anyone else, let's say me or you, assuming that you're not an elected official, if I have some morals or values, I can't make them apply to you. I can say what I want to say. I can offer my opinion. I can disagree with you or agree with you, but I can't make you do anything. You really can't make anybody do anything. Someone can break the law if they want to. So Christian National already answered that one. So AJ said, breaking the word down to two parts to spin it positive. A word is not a word with two parts. That's a phrase, AJ Ward. If we want to get technical here, I don't think this is the direction you want to go. Christian nationalism is not one word. It's a phrase, and there are two words, Christian nationalism. I'm not breaking it down. I'm looking at it exactly as it is. But Heck said, depends on the nationalist. Exactly. Daniel said, what's wrong with governing your country? Nothing. And again, this is where the arguments come in with nationalism, because nationalism has a very wide range of what exactly does it mean. So nationalist can be someone who loves America. Nationalist also can be someone who hates every other country in the world and wants anyone who's not from America to stay out of America. You could be on either end of that spectrum. So it depends on how the person is using the word. That's why these words are so slippery, because you can mean a whole lot of different things. And all it does is just lead to people debating about it, like what we're doing right now. Cosmically said, that's the problem, using religious justification to make laws. I don't think that's a problem. It's not about what someone uses to make laws. I would go a level higher, Cosmic, on what you're saying here and say that laws get made based on the people who we elected to make the laws. Who makes laws? Congress. How does somebody become part of Congress? They run for election. How do they join Congress? They win their election. How do they win their election? We voted for them. So if you don't like any laws being made or you don't like the justification behind the law, then what you need to do is not get mad about the fact that it exists. Is what you need to do is go vote for someone different so that they make different laws based on different reasons. This is why politicians do campaigns. They tell you what they're about and what they stand on. And if you like this person, you vote for them. If you don't like them, you vote for somebody else. That's the way a democratic election process works. So it's not that someone's wrong because they have religious principles that lead to their legislation. If you don't like that, then how they win? You should have voted for somebody else, or you should have went out and did some activism or some protesting or some campaigning to help the other person win. If you care that much. If you don't care that much, like me, I may not like Joe Biden, or I might not like Donald Trump. But what I can do, even if Donald Trump wins, if I don't like Donald Trump, I can live my life in a way that I place myself above any of his governance. And that's ultimately what I tell people. Ultimately, my ultimate outcome for all of you is that you want to set your life up, situate yourself to the point that no matter what a politician does, you can hover above anything that they do, whether you like them or you don't like them. If you end up being too much subjected to what the government does, you put yourself in that position as a general point. So appreciate you, Daniel. Good to see you here. Michelle, thank you for the hand heart. Daniel said, nothing wrong with it. The left sensationalizes it to be, yes, exactly. I mean, that's what it is. Knuckle said, Christian nationalism together is not the same as the words separately. Well, it's a pejorative. I mean, the whole point is it's used as a pejorative. And then I broke it down to explain exactly what is it. Christians who are America first, again, nothing wrong with that. But if you say someone who is a religious heretic, or they're a overzealous religious person, and they are all about America and they're xenophobic about other countries, that could define a Christian nationalist as well. So again, it depends on the way you're using the term. Just throwing the term out there is a slippery term, because you can define it and redefine it however you want in the midst of the same conversation. And this is the slippery shit that people do. They throw a term out there that can be what's the word? The word is escaping me. The word that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And then based on how the conversation goes, they just change how they're interpreting the word. So they just move the goalposts around in the middle of the conversation. One second. So Knuckles said, these are the same people who would hate an Iranian or Sea country nationalist. America wants to eradicate them. Okay, I'll just read that. Marky said, I fly the American flag. Does that make me a nationalist? Probably, Marky man. Yes, I think most people would say that makes you a nationalist. And this is what it's called is equivocation. Equivocation is when you change the terms around. You use a word or phrase that can be used in different ways and can be interpreted in different ways, and then you move the dial, you shift the dial up or down as necessary in the midst of the same conversation. Papa said, I'm programmed too. Yes, exactly. Everybody's programmed. So Cosmic was talking about anti-Christian bias task force. Well, they're a task force for damn near anti-everything. Why are you making it only about Christians? There's a task force for LGBTQ. There's a task force for Asians. There's a task force for Jewish people. There's a task force for black people. There's a task force for women. There's a task force for everything. There's a task force for everything. So you can't focus on Christians for that. Mr. Ohio says, some people are programmed to drink coffee first thing in the morning. They'll be out of whack. Yeah, exactly. Kat said, those words mean nothing anymore. Pretty much. That's the problem with these pejoratives, that people throw them out so recklessly that they start to lose their value. And then when someone actually is accurately described that way, it doesn't land because you use the word so often that people don't hear it anymore. Knuckles said, so you just don't have object permanence. You think people don't hide their intention? I don't like the phrasing of this question. It's a straw man-ish question. I'm not even going to say you did a straw man, but when you ask me these questions that you're limiting me to a yes or no answer, I reject them. So you're going to have to rephrase this question. Mike May said, that's because they know it's bad. That's why the Proud Boys must hide their face. I've seen some Proud Boys with their faces out. It's not because they know it's bad, Mike. I would say this is a false frame. I think the people on the right who are doing things, let's say like that, the same way the Proud Boys a Proud Boy may hide his face, but someone BLM does not hide their face, is because the media seems to lean more to the left. And social media, especially before Elon got involved, lean a lot more to the left. So it's a lot easier to be in some group that could be considered radical. It was easier to be in one of those groups on the left because you can get away with it than it would be to be in one of those groups on the right. And also on the political left, they tend to control most of the colleges. They control most of the corporations. And at the time that this was really a big thing, who was in office? Someone on the political left. So that's one of the reasons too. We can't just discount that. Ice Cold said, a lot of people in here listening to respond instead of understanding. Well, they're not even doing that. They're not even listening. What they're doing is just saying what they want to say, which is fine. I mean, this is normal discourse, ladies and gentlemen. Any of you had these conversations in person, it goes just like this. Papa said, let's stay away from the Matrix and talk about making cheese. Yeah, good luck. Murphy said, I'm a nationalist. Cosmically said that makes you a patriot. A nationalist is one taking steps to ensure their view is law all over. Well, it depends on what that view is, and it depends on what power they have to actually make that happen. If you got voted for, then your view and the view of the constituents you represent is exactly what you're supposed to be trying to make into law. That's what you're supposed to do. It depends on what you mean by this. This language that you use at the end of your comment it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So I don't know if you talk like this on purpose, intentionally, or if I'm just breaking this down in a way that you've never considered it. In my experience, with all the things that you said so far, I'm assuming this is just your normal style of communication. So using these terms, it can be interpreted in a very wide range of ways, and this gives you a lot of options in the midst of the conversation to keep subtly shifting the goalposts on any point. I'm not even saying you're doing it maliciously. I think this is the normal way most people communicate. I've had enough conversation with enough people. Somewhat on the principles of Christianity, most founding fathers were deists. Okay, fine. Enco Tiat said, of course we can complain about it after. Are you kidding? What are you referring to? We said, what a concept of having morals. Yes. AJ said, let's get technical. Break down the phrase instead of the two separate words. The phrase consists of two separate words. I got as technical as you can get by breaking it down into two words. What do you want? How much more technical can you get than breaking a two-word phrase down into each individual word? I'm a father said, all the titles in your background are all backward. Any way to correct that so I can look them up? Yeah, that would require me mirroring my screen. And I had it mirrored before, but people were saying they liked it better this way. So that's the reason I do it this way. So I could tell you where to get these books. I'm a father. Just go to the link in my profile. You're on TikTok. Go to the link in my profile. It's workonyourgame.live. And you'll see links to all these books. So that solves your problem very easily. AJ says, so separating church from state isn't a thing. Straw man of the day, AJ Ward. Congratulations with the straw man question. Y'all got to be careful with these questions starting with the word so. Start a question with the word so. That often means you're about to rephrase what I said into something that I didn't say. I didn't say anything about separating church from state. I didn't even mention it here. You asking this question is a straw man because you are limiting me and giving me a binary with a yes or no question on something that I didn't even mention. That is the definition of a straw man. Nice job, AJ Ward. The champ said they only talk about Christian. They never talk about any other religion. That's very interesting, and it is true. You only hear nationalists when you're talking about Christians. You don't hear nationalists about any other religion. John said, isn't that what MLK and Malcolm X were trying to do? What are you referring to? Knuckle said you had to good equivocation. What do you mean? Knuckle said, out here Googling SAT words. Ha ha ha. Well, is that an SAT word? I took the SATs a long time ago, but who cares about the SAT? It's a logical fallacy is what I looked up. The dial has stayed the same as I can tell. Increased use of Christian values to influence law. I don't see that, but you might. It depends on what you're paying attention to. There's a lot going on in the government. Sir, control, come on. The universities are made of people as representatives, no different than the government. No, I wouldn't say that. Most universities are left-leaning universities. How often do you see someone wearing a Trump hat walking around on the college campus? Unless it's a staunchly conservative campus, you don't see that too often. How many do you see someone with a Trump hat working at a college campus? Actually, is a better question. Student maybe can wear it, but faculty? I don't think so. How often do you see, since we're on this topic of universities, how often do you see someone on a political left going to speak at a college, and before they get a chance to speak, there's a protest to the point that they can't even give their speech because the protest basically stopped the speech from even happening, or they got to have the speech off campus, or they got to have a bunch of security for the person on the left coming in to speak, or a person with left-leaning views coming in to speak. There are so many people on the right opposing them and protesting them that they can't speak. Have you ever seen that at a college campus? Most of you, the answer is no, you haven't seen that. How many of you have seen somebody who is leaning to the right politically coming to speak at a college, and they can't even give the speech because of the protests or because of bomb threats or death threats or all these other things, or they get drowned out while they're trying to speak, or there's people are threatening them and they get locked in a room and they can't get out the room, and you got all the security they need. just because they're on the political right and there's a bunch of people protesting against them. How often have you seen that? Now, you're telling me that they're about equal? Is that what you're proposing, or are you proposing something different? We know that colleges lean to the left. That's not even something worth debating. Knuckles said, look at you memorizing. I've been pointing out the straw man a day for like 3 months, probably longer than that. I'm pointing out the straw man a day for damn near a year. Knuckles McGinty, you must be new around here. Nice try, though. The question being, using religious justification, we're thinning the line of church and state. I never talked about the line between church and state. And the issue is, Cosmic, what you're doing here is you're asking me to answer a question that you want me to answer. The problem is we are not equals here. All right. You are a guest. I'm the host. So the topic is whatever I decide it is. If I don't want to talk about a topic that you bring up in the comments, then the topic shall not be discussed. So that's just the way that it goes. Now, if you want to flip that, then you got to do your own live stream. So Cosmic said, we don't see conservatives because the people don't want them. That's the people's choice. What people? Our media people went to those left-leaning colleges. Yes, they did. Greta said, I see way more leftist values being forced on me than the right. Generally, that's what I see too, but it could be just perception bias by both of us. Let's see. How many genders are there for you? 2. Boys and girls. And then somebody's going to ask me about the difference between sex and gender. There are boys and girls. All right, that's my answer to any of the questions about that. Cosmic said, you're right. You never talked about that, but all of this doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's an observation. Well, Cosmic, you have typed in so many things here. Why do you not do your own live streams? I am seriously asking you that question. Why are you in here spilling all your thoughts? You should be in your own live stream. I would never leave this many comments to somebody else's live stream, personally. If I had that much to say, shit, I'm making my own live stream. You want to know how I come up with so much content, folks? Would you like to know? I listen to what other people say. I listen. I don't comment. I listen. And if I hear what another person says and I have so much to say about what they're saying, like in contrast to what they're saying, or I really disagree with them, I say, I'm glad this person said this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whole live stream on this topic, or I'm going to do a podcast episode on this topic, or I'm going to write a book on this topic, and I go use it for my own purposes. But I would never take all of my thoughts and use them in the comments to somebody else's live stream, because then they just go in the comments and they disappear. As soon as the live stream is over, all these things that you type, Cosmic, they just disappear. Why would you do that? I mean, I appreciate the engagement, but at the same time, on a serious level, you should be doing your own live streams. Why would you use all your thoughts in the comments to this live? And whenever I got to comment on somebody else's shit, I'm going to make my own content. That's what I do. That's how I create so much content. It's not that I just sit in a basement and everything just pops into my head. Cosmic said, doesn't it feed your engagement and your algorithm all to your benefit? Generally, yes. As I said, I appreciate it. But at the same time, I mean, you said a lot. I mean, a lot of people are commenting, but you've dominated the comments here today. I'm just asking, why don't you do your own live stream? I mean, you clearly have a lot of things to say. I'm saying that objectively. Jackie said, great advice on coming up with content, dropping dimes again today. Thank you, Jackie. Well, this is how I come up with stuff. I mean, I got a lot of ideas myself that I come up with on my own, but can't come up with as much as I've created over the years by myself. So I use other people. I use X specifically for this reason, to find out what's going on in the world. And then I go and create content like these to talk about it. So when I find out what's going on, I say, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. No, I like that one better. All right, we're going to talk about this. And then I go see what's being said and what got talked about and what's true and what's not and all the opinions, et cetera, et cetera. That's how I come up with what I do in these live streams. So it's not me just waking up in the morning and all of a sudden these ideas, these big, beautiful ideas just pop up out of nowhere. I wish I was that smart, but I'm not. I use other people. Papa said, what's your personal view on the LGBTQ thing? What, the thing? I don't know it's a thing. I think it's real. What about it? You got to ask me a more specific question. It's a little bit too broad of a question. But I've talked about it in content. So my YouTube channel is linked in my TikTok. You can see my thoughts on the trans community, my thoughts on boys playing girls sports, my thoughts on what else is there about the LGBTQ community. I don't know what else there is. Oh, I talked about Pride Month, which is in June still Pride Month. I ain't heard nobody talk about Pride Month in a long time. I did a whole live on Pride Month. Papa Language. I did it on, I believe it was June 1st. One of those days I did a whole live on Pride Month. So I'm on the record on all these things. So everything you hear me mentioning, I'm on the record with all this stuff is on my YouTube, or I did a live. All my lives get recorded and they go on YouTube. I'm on YouTube right now, but I get way more people on TikTok. So all the comments I'm reading are for TikTok because that's where all the comments are at. But I have done lives on all these topics. I have a podcast that comes out every day. It's called Work on Your Game. I'm going to show you all the page that you will see when you go to the link in my profile on TikTok. Those of you on TikTok, you want to get my book, The Third Day. That's that book link right there, thirddaybook.com. This book is all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it on those long days, those Fridays. Some of you probably tired and don't want to be working today. How do you show up on that day? This book right here, thirddaybook.com. That's that link, but you can't click on links on TikTok. Click on the link in my profile. It takes you to this page right here that has all the links. So my YouTube channel is linked in here. My email list is linked in here. My group coaching programs in here. My podcast is linked in here. Apple and Spotify. The links for both are in there. The books you can get for free are in there. I got a chat bot called Dre GPT. So if you like the way that I talk here, just get on Dre GPT. You can talk to it all day, 24/7, and it never gets tired. My executive assistant's email address is in there. So if you want me for a media appearance or a speaking gig, we got you. Work on Your Game University, where we do our coaching and consulting, is all there. And you get a beautiful picture of me at the bottom. That is all at workonyourgame.live. That page. We made this space specifically for those of you watching the lives. So I'm like, man, people are watching these lives, and we want to take them to a next step, but we can't give them links. What do? Let's just make a page for the live. Workonyourgame.live. All right, beautiful idea, if I may say so myself. So, Carla, thank you for the goats. And we got to 100,000 likes here today. Thank you, everybody. Renee said, look at you helping Cosmic work on his game. Maybe. J. Cole says, Mama called him Twitter. I'm going to call him Twitter. Some people still call it Twitter. I used to for a while, but now I'm used to calling it X. Gary said, why are people swaying away from the uncomfortable conversation about Planned Parenthood? Well, we talked about it for a good hour. Marky, appreciate you. Papa said, where's that? I don't know what you're referring to. Workonyourgame.live is the link that I was just talking about, if that's what you're referring to. Okay, everybody. So we do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. Usually I stop at 10. We're almost at 10, so we're about to stop this one. 8 a.m. Eastern is when I do these lives. So if you like this one, then please be back on Monday. If you didn't like this one, come back Monday. If you like my style and you think I'm very educated and intelligent and smart, come back Monday. If you like my style, but you think I'm misinformed and I don't know what I'm talking about and something else negative about me, come back Monday. Y'all can come back Monday too. Everybody come back on Monday, 8 a.m. Eastern. I think Monday, my prediction is we'll probably be talking about P. Diddy. I'm predicting Monday will be P. Diddy. But we might not talk about P. Diddy. It might be something else. I don't know. But I'm predicting it might be P. Diddy. Even though I control the live, it depends on what happens. Anything can happen over the weekend. I didn't know Trump was going to bomb Iran over the weekend, so that wasn't planned for this Monday. But anything can happen over the weekend. Anything that occurs that becomes a big enough thing that I think is worth talking about, that's what we'll talk about on Monday. P. Diddy is coming. Whenever we get, especially if you get a verdict, that's guaranteed P. Diddy. But even before the verdict, if they don't have a verdict yet by Monday, I might still talk about it because I got some thoughts on what I think could, should, or would happen in this case. And I believe we know the closing arguments, I believe, are happening today. The prosecution, I think prosecution already made their closing argument. I think the defense is going to make their closing argument. Then it's going to go to the jury. I think the jury is going to get the case today. Hey, maybe they'll come up with a verdict immediately. Maybe not. But next week, I'm predicting at least one day we'll be talking about P. Diddy. So that's where I'm at when it comes to P. Diddy next week. I will see you all Monday morning. Everybody have a great weekend. Work on your game. We are out of here. Workonyourgame.live. Get links. That link is in my profile on TikTok. So those of you on TikTok, go to the link in my profile as soon as I end this live. Click on that link. It'll take you to the page. You can get my books, my coaching program, get on my email list, my YouTube, my podcast. Everything is on that page. I made that for y'all. Everybody have a great weekend. We out of here. Work on your game.